All right. So being that I look like Jesus if he lasted another 11 years, because I'm 44, this is a segment where you get to ask your questions. So what would Garrett do? Not what would Jesus do, but what would Garrett do financially? And so you can go ahead and enter your comments here at YouTube and we'll answer the questions, everything from like when you're starting a business, the type of corporation you choose, how to finance a car. And I just like to be able to communicate with you and give you the value that needs more than just typing a few words. So I've got my sidekick of almost 21 years now that we've been married. We dated for how many? 3 years? Was it 3 or 2.5
years?
Okay, so 2.5.
Yep.
We kissed December 1st, 1999.
Yep.
And then we got married June 1st of 2002. And we're still married.
Still.
Wow, that hurts the way that you just said that, babe.
We're overachievers.
You know, we've made it this far.
It's just because we just keep changing. So it's like we have new spouses every few years. So it's good.
Yeah, so it doesn't get boring.
Mixes it up. Yeah, for sure.
You're so good at manifesting things that then you do what you get what you want. And you're like, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah, because I'm a new person.
Yeah. You're a cat. Like, you got to know exactly when to be around and when to be away. And like, you'll be aloof. And
I like things on my terms, for sure.
that's for sure. You're a pain in the ass. So anyway, let's go through some of these questions.
Okay, so we have questions that people wrote in. This is from Trip. Okay, I need some help with my scenario. I have a Honda Civic Type R. I bought it for $55,000, deposited $10,000, and borrowed the rest with the bank. The bank gave me 6% interest for a 7-year loan, which is not bad. I have checked the market value of my Type R. It's still sitting at $45,000 to $55,000 secondhand.
Nice.
Now, I'm thinking of refinancing my car to get an Isuzu D-Max. My question is it worth selling the Type R and getting a refinance to buy the D-Max? Thank you in advance.
So you're saying, should he sell his car, refinance, it sounds like?
I'm saying, is it worth it?
I mean, it depends on what the Isuzu costs, the new, right? Or what he's buying that. And what the difference is going to be. There's a lot of considerations on this. How much the difference is going to be in what you pay for insurance, the different gas mileage, the different level of enjoyment you have from the car, what your interest rate will be.
Yeah, I think the question is, because he says the bank gave me 6% interest for a 7-year loan. So I think he might be asking about what are interest rates now?
Yeah, well, right now interest rates have been creeping up and going up.
Right. So then is it worth it? I think that's what
probably all you have to do is look at the payment and look at the payment schedule to see how much interest you're paying. Because the way that an amortized loan works is it's front end loaded on the interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you pay more interest in the first month than the last month. The last month is almost all principal because you're only being charged on that very small amount at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go and get a new car, it depreciates pretty quickly off the lot. We've been in a time that because of supply and not enough computer chips and, the secondary market, like it's been really strong. Even my truck, I could sell for almost what I bought for.
Yeah, which is what he's saying. He bought it for $55,000. Now it sits $45,000.
Yeah. So the question is, what's this next vehicle? What's the payment? How much interest are you paying up front? How much more important is it to get this other vehicle? Because there's the time. Like, remember when we went and got your Jeep? How long, even though we were just trading in and paying cash, how long were we at the car dealership? We said, this is the one we want. And we're still there for 4 hours.
Okay. So tell him what he should consider and what would swing him towards buying this new car.
New interest rate's probably going to be higher unless your credit has improved because, back in the day, you could get interest rates of 1.9 and 2.9 where he's at 6. So maybe it would be equivalent. How much interest are you paying right now? Look at your amortization schedule, see what the interest is that you're paying versus the amount that you're paying down on principal. Compare that to the new loan. Because if you go get a new loan, that's 7 more years. He's already into this loan and getting through some of those first years. So it comes down to there's price, there's cost, there's value. Value is your overall feeling of satisfaction. That's the first question. Which car do you love more? What's going to bring you more utility?
Well, I'm guessing the Isuzu D-Max.
The second thing is what's the cost? That's what I'm trying to help him measure, like the interest rate, the time, the insurance cost, those types of considerations, the gas mileage, and then the price.
And is it going to create stress in his life to have like another payment that he has to pay for so many more years?
Well, yeah. So you add time, and then the price is just what do you pay when you take this off the lot, and what if you trade it in or whatever, there might be like tax benefits to the trade in. So really, what it comes down to is it's probably not a good financial decision unless it absolutely is something that you truly want. That's
Okay.
that's the bottom line. And I've given all the considerations.
Okay, so his question actually is it worth selling the Type R and getting a refinance to buy? Does that change your
You don't refinance if you sold the car. He's saying getting a new loan
Okay,
is what
put
he's talking
refinance.
about on a new vehicle. And again, I go back to what are you paying in principal versus interest on your loan now, and how much time is left? How long will that new loan be that you're adding on to the back end, and how much you're paying in principal versus interest because you're starting over.
Okay. All right.
So I wouldn't start over unless you're absolutely in love with this other vehicle.
Yeah, unless it's going to create like
Yeah,
a fire
the
in
value,
you
yeah.
and a lot of joy. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. So our next person wrote in. This is from Brad, one of our friends, and he said,
One of our 6'7" friends,
this is a massive cowboy
big
guy.
dude.
He's amazing. So he says, can you go slightly deeper into what your catchphrases mean? So the examples he gives is dollar follows value, relationship capital equation, and then he puts et cetera, because there's a couple others.
Yeah, and so I've said it a few different ways. Money chases value, dollars follow value. So value first, and the byproduct is money. So if I add value in your life and you're not a family member, because I add value to you all the time and you never give me dollars.
Never.
Never.
I don't have any dollars.
Never once.
They're your dollars.
No dollars. So, or the kids, no dollars. Anyway, it's if we know our value and we bring value to other people, the byproduct is dollars. When people chase money without thinking about value, it's more confusing. It's more trading time. It's more chasing things that don't really light us up or that we don't enjoy. And there's a different level of energy when we do things that chase money. Like when we were first getting married, I don't think we were quite getting married yet, but we were talking about it. I was going to go to Milwaukee. When I flew in, it was a blizzard. I was like this. And then I was like, you want to come to Milwaukee? You're like, I don't know. I was like, oh, so you're not going to marry me if I move to Milwaukee, I see.
It's really
but
cool.
that was part of the considerations here, right?
Yeah.
Of what we're doing. I could have been an investment banker. That was huge compensation for institutional investing and investment banking, but it wasn't who I was.
Yeah, I remember you were like, I'll just be playing with.
I was like,
be meaningful to you.
I think I could have made a big amount of money in a short time, and I just would have just been depressed. So like when we know our value, what are our skill sets? What are our abilities? What are our competencies? What are our aptitudes? When we understand that, and when we can find the method to bring that to the world, so that especially when I'm impacting strangers, people I've never met, they can tap into that value by exchanging money, because money follows value. So we think about our value, understand it, deliver value to people first, and then money follows. Instead of some people like, if I only had the money, then I would do this.
Right.
And then it's backwards, right? And people that think it takes money to make money forget it takes relationships and ideas to make money. It takes value and service and solving problems to make money.
Okay. So
Another phrase.
The other one he asked about was relationship capital equation.
Yeah, so it's the value equation, and the equation goes like this. It doesn't matter how many resources we have. It matters how resourceful we become. And we all have hidden and untapped potential called hidden capital. That's our mental capital. What's mental capital? I want to hear from you.
It's your ideas and your creations.
Relationship capital.
It's your relationships with people.
And so it's our mental capital multiplied by our relationship capital determines our financial capital. See, most people try to leverage financial capital. I need to borrow to buy this real estate. I need to get a student loan to get this education so I can make more money.
Right.
And so they borrow money. But what I'm saying is you don't have to leverage financial capital. You can leverage mental capital. When I film this video, when I write a book, when I speak at an event with a lot of people, when I do a webinar, that's leveraging my mental capital to impact a lot of people at once.
Right. So there's other ways to get financial capital without using finance.
So the bridge between our mental and relationship capital is what I would call business. That's the bridge. And that bridge is fueled by value, service, and solving problems. So the more we can do that, the byproduct is financial capital. So if you think you have a money problem, it's never really a money problem. It's a mental problem. Like you just don't know what to do. I've been stuck, right? Confused about things, not sure what to do. You've one time been stuck before.
Only once.
Just once.
Just one time. That's it.
But, and it's hard to think clearly unless you get outside questions or you start to, and like a lot of people discount their mental capital. I'm always like, you're the best listener. You're like, it's not hard to do. I'm like, I can't listen worth a shit. There's so many times where the viewers are like, Garrett interrupts so much. And I work on it. I do. And I still interrupt.
Yeah, you are much better though.
Well, because you're always grabbing my knee under the table. How about the time we were with our friends, Warren and Rebecca, and she was just like grabbing my knee for like, just to be like, loving. And I was like, what? I'm listening. I was like, that's how trained I am in this whole thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but people do. They discount the things that they're good at because they think everybody can be good at
right.
those things.
Because if it's more natural, like we just went to our son's piano recital and he just like
blew us
busted
away.
out this song.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the
We're
hell?
like, she's only
I haven't even heard him
once.
play a piano at our house.
Right.
And
It
he's
was
like,
amazing.
"Mm."
Yeah.
Like,
He was
yeah.
like, what do you mean?
Or
It
like
was great.
he just teaches himself Ableton and starts creating music.
Yeah.
I'm like, but that's
Right.
the
But
thing
if
is we
I had to
discount.
do that, that would take me 10 years to learn what he learned and taught himself in 3 months.
But my ego's so big, I don't discount my ability. I'm like, babe, I wrote the best thing ever.
I'm amazing at
I'm here to say someone just read one of my blogs and said, that was probably the most valuable 15 minutes I've ever spent in my life. And I haven't even brought it up to you because I waited to brag in front of everyone else. I was like, first, I feel bad for them that no, but it was really good.
Yeah.
I'm proud of my blog. I
It
try
was
to get
probably
you
the
to read it.
perfect thing they needed to hear right
Right.
at that moment.
That's why it feels great because I love the process of writing it. And then so it's knowing our value is key and then delivering that value. Dollars will follow value. And we might be one idea or one relationship away from a new level of prosperity. That's the value equation. That's understanding that. Another saying is I say no one shrinks their way to wealth. Like if you remember when I read the book The Millionaire Next Door.
I do.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those like we're gonna penny pinch our way to wealth. Let's be broke millionaires and cheapskates.
Yeah.
And the reality was you don't shrink your way to wealth. You grow your way to wealth by impacting people, by adding value to people. So that's another saying that I've said quite often. I don't know. Vision is the ultimate container in which to create value.
Oh, I like that. I haven't heard that very much.
Well, it's in the play, so you think you would have heard it 100 times.
Well, I've heard the play 100 times.
Yeah, vision is the container. It tells us, it informs our brain like what to work on.
Yeah.
If we're in scarcity, it's small or just solving something. But if it's like a bigger vision is beyond our current reach and it requires other people's abilities and resources to help us as well. So that would be another saying, that I say quite often, or you've got all the mental and relationship capital required to get started and to win. It's within reach or referral. So again, it's tapping into relationships.
Yeah.
We win when we play. Like the more we can find the inner artist and enjoy life, I think it brings out a whole different level of energy versus just the days of labor.
Yeah.
Hey, money, make me happy. Or renting happiness. That's something I say quite often. And that's like where we get those dopamine hits, like when I bought my truck, I love showing everyone. Now it's like, it just wears off.
Yeah.
It's just stuff.
Yeah.
Our view doesn't ever wear off though, does it?
No.
Better not. Because we're in that show, The Money Trap, right? Or whatever it is. Like Tom Hanks bought a house. And
The money pit.
The money pit.
Yeah.
So that's our house.
Yeah.
It's how we spend our money.
No, we definitely love this.
So those are, okay, that's a couple. I know I have more, but that's a good start.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another question, and this is from a call. He has a couple questions here. He says, what is the best way, perhaps a how-to use the value of your company to take out a loan or access a line of credit? And the Garrett G algorithm on deciding if it's pragmatic and responsible for the situation, e.g. investments.
I mean, Kyle, if he ever hugs you, he'll break a rib. He was an MMA fighter.
Oh.
Owns a bunch of like jiu-jitsu or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, studios. But okay, the process is this. Have you ever heard of me talk about cost of money?
Yeah.
Remember back when we dated and I talked about velocity and you said if I brought it up again, it wasn't going to work out between us?
I was like, I've heard this too many times. Stop talking about it.
And yet, when I talked to you about velocity today, you'd forgotten.
No, I knew that. I remember those from your seminars.
Yeah, okay.
You guys talked about it a lot back then.
You said that we were nerds. So, cost of money is your highest bet, your best long-term rate of return you can get on your money, or the highest price you're paying for borrowing money. So there's a couple important things to know. You always pay interest. whether you pay cash and you forfeit the right to earn interest on that money,
Mm-hmm.
or you borrow and you pay someone interest to use their money.
Right.
Either way, there's an interest cost. One is really seen because you're paying money
'Cause you're
towards
paying
it.
monthly, yeah.
The other one's harder to see because it's something you forfeit. So you kind of didn't realize it was there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people when they're young, they don't realize that.
Right, because I didn't really realize that. So cost of money, if someone has a 29% interest rate credit card, anytime they don't pay that down, every dollar they spend is really costing them $1.29 because
Insane.
that's the cost of money.
Yeah.
If someone right now knows how to invest and get 6% on their money, and they could do that for a long period of time, that's their cost of money. Now, there's some people that might find these like time periods in their business or a weird thing in the economy where they can get a 20% rate of return.
Yeah.
I just talked to someone that got an 80% rate of return on a big investment, but he was like, that's a once in a lifetime thing that everything lined up and all worked out with how everything happened.
Yeah.
So that's not sustainable, right? That's not cost of money. That's a flash in the pan. Like think of the days we used to do hard money lending, which is we would be the short-term financing before someone went to a bank.
Yeah, yeah.
You could get 30% annualized
Yeah,
on
'cause
that.
it's such a short period of time. It's just like you're like the bridge.
But then in 2008, that goes away and you lose money. So like you have to be careful because these returns that people got on crypto for a while for just buying and sitting on it, or times where real estate is, in low interest rates and is booming. Like people think, oh, that's going to last forever, but it can't. It's not sustainable. Like if I've had people say, oh, I know this guy's been trading options. You know what trading options is?
No.
Okay, so it's options are you're betting that a stock's going to go up. That's called a call.
I remember you teaching me this.
Or going down, right? That's called a put. And so one person wins and the other person loses.
Mm-hmm.
And I have people say, oh, this guy's been doing it for 30 years and he got 30% every year. And I'm like, if that were true,
everybody would do it.
They'd be worth hundreds of billions of dollars because that's what that would do over that long of a period of time. That is just not sustainable because you look at the overall economy and you look at what percentage would happen from that. But it is something that happens short term. So what you want with cost of money is realistic, either what you're paying for money or what you could earn sustainably with your money.
Mm-hmm.
That becomes
6%.
Yeah, in corporate finance, they call that a hurdle rate. So when you think of like a hurdle race, you have to jump the hurdle.
Yeah.
So the hurdle is these businesses are like, if we're not getting at least 6%, we're not going to invest in it because we know we can get that already.
Yeah. That's easy. You can get
right. So that cost of money is, well, if I can earn 6 or pay 6, it doesn't matter other than now you think of peace of mind. So if I had an account where I'm like, babe, we can get 6% in this account, and you're like, but our mortgage is 6%, would you rather earn 6 or would you rather pay off the loan for 6?
Earn 6.
Okay, so the reason you might want to earn 6 is you don't know there might be other opportunities that come up.
Mm-hmm.
You can have access to that money. Mm-hmm. That would be the considerations. Yeah. But here's why you might want to pay it off. Because what if that 6% went down to 5? Or what if that 6% had some risk and you could lose that money?
Yeah.
It all depends on peace of mind and economics.
Yeah, the scenario.
Right, the scenario. So if we're looking at a loan, if I could earn 6 or pay 6, I might get the loan because there might be tax advantages to having the loan. And that tax advantage would make it more like I'm earning 6, but I'm only having to pay a net of 4% after the taxes. Yeah. And if there's opportunity, I now have cash that I could do something with. Or if we get in a financial, pickle or cash flow struggle, I've got cash to help me through it versus having all my money tied up in an asset that I can't get to the money.
Right, that's what I was thinking about. Why I would have chose the earn.
Right, yeah. And you're a financial conservative or planner. Mm-hmm. So not all financial conservatives or planners would answer that way.
Yeah,
and that's GarrettGunderson.com/quiz to find out your money persona, which determines kind of your overall how to handle these things. It's super informative and helpful. But a lot of conservatives might just want to pay that off and not ever have to worry about it. Like I have people that watch, I have a home mortgage live video and people get really fired up on it.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't been married to you, I probably would have said, pay off the loan. I don't want to be in debt. I would have thought of that a little bit differently. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now our mortgage is at 2.75%.
Yeah.
I know we can make 5% doing nothing.
Yeah.
So we have the mortgage.
Yeah, we offset. Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing. So you have to think of, will it infringe on your peace of mind if you get the loan? Mm-hmm. What's your cash flow? if things change because businesses change, economies change, like he's asking, how do you be fiscally responsible? You have to really consider, like, will this feel okay, or will this be? A lot of entrepreneurs are optimistic, so they get overextended, or they go too fast, and it takes longer for something to happen, or the economy changes, or an employee turnover, or a reputation risk online, or something starts to impact their business. So, how much liquidity do you have? So that you can handle those short-term things. What are you going to earn on that money? On a worst case scenario, how long before you break even? So those are the main considerations, and knowing your cost of money.
Okay. So here's his second question.
Okay.
How do you decide if you want to go with a revocable or irrevocable trust?
For most people, a revocable trust is fine. So a trust is basically used in a few different places. A will and a trust, right?
Yeah.
Most people use a revocable trust, which says you can put money in, you can take money out. The disadvantage of that is people could still sue you, and that money's just available.
Right. They can take that as part of you.
It's not protected while you're alive. But a revocable trust, upon the death of one of the people that own the trust, there's actually a term for that, but my brain fart. But then it becomes irrevocable, which then protects it after death.
So if they get it revocable and then one of them dies, it becomes irrevocable?
Yeah, you could even have where it's like a family trust where there's two, like you have one and I have one.
Yeah.
When I die, mine becomes irrevocable,
okay,
which protects it, which also takes advantage of some of the ways to pass the money tax-free. I can pass all my assets to you tax-free. But if I don't have a revocable trust on me and I pass it to you, then you die, we can only pass half as much to our heirs without taxes.
Because we went through that process.
So we want to use our coupon as what, it's an easy way to think of it on each one. So our trust for when we weren't really wealthy was just a revocable trust. That's all we used.
Yeah.
But once you start to build a certain amount of wealth, there's a thing called the Domestic Asset Protection Trust, DAPT, ADAPT. And it's irrevocable, which means it's more protected. Now, most irrevocable trusts, you can't get to the money.
Yeah.
But we have something called a distribution trustee that we can fire and hire someone else, and they can choose to let us get to that money. So it still keeps it out of our estate for estate taxes. It's more protected from a liability standpoint. But really, I think you should be worth millions before you're getting into the irrevocable side. And otherwise, you handle it with corporate structure, liability protection.
Just so that you have access to it.
And policies. Yeah, and it's kind of like overkill. Okay. It's a terrible analogy, but it's like using a 50 caliber gun on a bunny.
Yeah.
It's
unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. You're adding complication. So
okay, so his last question is anything to do with, he's asking, do you know of anything that he can use to teach his kids about the value of money and making an emotional connection, feeling inspired to take part in the economy, preferably as an entrepreneur or an innovator?
Yeah, there's a guy by the name of Scott Donnell that's created this program called Gravy Stack. And it's an entire program where kids learn how to make money, like within the family first. Like that's one of the things we've been talking about, having the kids sell stuff.
Yeah.
And giving them 50% for finding things that we're not utilizing and selling them. It's kind of like getting paid to de-junk our house.
Yeah.
Right. But then you can go and they could learn that skill and take it to other family members, extended family members, and then eventually take that out to the world. So he has an entire program to help kids be entrepreneurial.
Okay.
And even Rich Christensen's book, Toes Turn Purple, has some really good entrepreneurial things for kids. So those are the two things I know. I don't know if Scott's program is fully live on the app yet, but I've been talking to him quite a bit and love what he's up to.
Okay. So look for that.
Yeah. And he has a book called Value Creation Kids that just hit the Wall Street Journal bestsellers list. So I ordered it on audiobook for us, by the way.
Oh, great. Okay, here's a question from Jeremy. The one question that I have for now is, when you talk about the 4 I's and specifically talking about insurance, could you give an example or examples on what to look for on overlaps on coverage? In other words, what exactly are we looking for? Maybe it takes steps further and elaborate on all coverages and what to look for: car, umbrella, house, and anything else you can think of.
Cool. So the 4 I's to efficiency is the letter I. So it's the IRS. A lot of people tip the government. Interest. A lot of people are overpaying interest because they don't know how to have the right credit reporting. Like just this week,
Yeah.
I found that your American Express was reporting on my
And your
and just by making sure that was done right, my credit went down 79 points and went back up 80 points within 4 days because I just got the alert,
on top of it.
handled it, and some weird CenturyLink thing from decades ago showed up, but it was because we paid something and then they sent it in transit to like another agency or something. But I got that fixed because I was aware of it. So having the right credit score, having the right cash flow reporting, having the right collateral, having the right connections to the right bankers, that's all big deal. The third one is investments.
Okay,
That's
so
the
we
third
have
eye.
insurance, we have IRS.
Well, IRS was the first one.
Mhm.
Second one was interest. Third one is investments, where they're commissions or fees or things that are holding your funds back and not performing.
Okay.
And then where he's talking about is insurance.
Yeah.
So insurance is the last I. So let's talk about this. Where are there duplicate coverages or improper structure?
Yeah, he's saying, how do I know?
So the first thing is everyone has to understand what they would consider an inconsequential expense. So I don't want to insure anything inconsequential. Like, we're making a claim on our home right now.
Right.
Our deductible's high. It's $10,000.
Yeah.
Because I don't really ever plan on making a claim unless it's something substantial. We've got people that can help us fix minor things.
Right. And we have $10,000 in the bank to be able to do
That's the key. So there's something called internal return and external return when it comes to our money. Internal return is, what are you getting with your investments? Maybe you're getting 7%. That's your internal return. External return is, we have money in savings that's not earning hardly anything. But because we have that money in savings, we can raise our deductible.
Right.
That raised deductible saves us money. So as an external return, because of how we look at the big picture. So it might only be getting a couple percent,
right,
but it saves us another 4% by being able to raise the deductible, and we can use that cash if something comes up. So you have to understand your deductibles based upon how much cash you have on hand, and you don't want to make a lot of insurance claims. If you're making,
if you have a $500 dent in your car, you're just going to go pay out of pocket.
Right. Or you just leave the dent, like my truck. The bumper. Have you not seen the dent in my bumper? I hit my buddy Jeff's car. I paid for that. Yeah.
Okay.
I blame Phoenix, our dog. So anyway, so deductibles are part of it. Even disability insurance has elimination periods. Can kick in after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months. The longer you can go, the more catastrophic coverage you can get, because you have a high likelihood of having a short-term. Right. So it's more about insure the catastrophic, not the inconsequential. And catastrophic is something that you'd lose sleep over, or it'd be hard to replace, where inconsequential is you could write a check and still go to sleep that night. So that threshold is going to be different for certain people. $1,000, $2,500, $10,000. It just depends on how much liquidity you have. Where there's duplicate coverages, I just saw this with someone looking at their stuff, where they had really high limits of liability on their car and home. Meaning most of the time, 100,000 per occurrence, or 100,000 per person, 300,000 maximum per occurrence on car insurance is kind of a good standard. 250,000, 500,000 other companies, but these guys had $1 million. I'm like, well, that's inefficient because they had an umbrella.
Yeah.
An umbrella covers an excess above a certain amount.
Right. So they basically have two umbrellas instead of.
Well, they have a duplicate coverage because their umbrella kicked in after 300,000. So why have $1 million?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I get what you're saying.
You're not getting double the coverage.
Right.
You're just inefficient coverage. So by simply doing the minimum required for the excess liability or umbrella to kick in, they're covering more with less money. Because an umbrella is usually a lot less expensive.
Well, where else do you usually see? Like when you look at people's stuff, where do you commonly see duplicate coverage?
That's the number one duplication that I see.
Okay.
Second is with these supplemental policies. So someone has like a life insurance policy, but then they'll have like accidental death and dismemberment. Accidental death and dismemberment means you died prematurely through an accident. The chances of that happening are like, it's not, you're more likely to die for a different reason. So why not just have coverage like through a real insurance policy?
Yeah, that covers
or
for
people
all
that have like credit insurance, or they have, which would cover their credit card if something happened to them, like where they were disabled or something, or they'll have mortgage insurance, where they're saying if I'm disabled, it'll make my mortgage payment. Just get a really good disability policy
that would cover all
and get rid of these supplemental things.
Yeah.
The only time I've seen supplemental things really work is some people have health insurance that has a big deductible for like maternity, and you can get like a maternity policy that covers that, but you have to have it. 10 months before you get pregnant. So there's some rules to that. You have to be careful. But a lot of those policies, and I have a YouTube video just on like 10 different insurances that are really inefficient and really not that effective. So that would be an example of you kind of already have this covered if you have the right coverages. And now you're adding these little supplemental things that don't really help you enough.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, like
Anything else?
like Aflac is one of those companies that provides a lot of those things.
Mhm.
And they have one of the biggest margins of money that comes in versus money that pays out. It's so small that gets paid out versus what comes in.
Oh,
Because people aren't really utilizing them.
Sure.
But they're like out of like, oh, I'll have this. Well, just get the best catastrophic coverages with a policy and get rid of those small things.
Okay.
So the umbrella policy is a big one. Deductibles is a big part of policy design, and then having another example is you could get death benefits on life insurance and use riders called accelerated benefit riders that would say, if you qualify for long-term care, you can use your death benefit or a percentage of your death benefit.
So that'd be kind of like that accidental insurance.
Which might be like, cool, now I don't need to go get long-term care because I have it covered here.
Okay.
But if you don't have it and now you're older, long-term care is a pretty important insurance for a lot of people because they wouldn't have the financial wherewithal to get good enough care, which now that's a burden on their family a lot of times, or they're just in inadequate places, and that's not really how you want to end your life.
That's all from Jeremy. Okay, so now we're on to Jacob. Here's a question I'd be interested in hearing you discuss. What are your opinions on the US dollar crashing? And if there's a possibility of this happening, where would be the best place to invest your money to keep it safe from economic collapse?
Well, look, it's problematic when we keep printing money without someone creating value. It's a problem. We've watched it happen with inflation, and they like to blame it on interest rates and things like that. When they're giving a lot of money in the form of the Federal Reserve, a lot of times that shows up as government treasuries, T-bills, T-bonds, T-notes. Those are all like supposedly kind of the most risk-free things you could put your money into because they're backed by the unlimited taxing power of the U.S. government. I don't know if you've heard of like debt ceiling talks.
Yeah.
If they don't raise the debt ceiling, they could start defaulting on those. So that's why they're going to raise it.
Oh.
I mean, it's a big charade, right?
Right. We're just going to.
This has happened over and over through the century.
Okay.
They talk about it, they battle, and then they eventually.
Yeah, you always hear that debt ceiling stuff.
The
Yeah.
cliff and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So when you're adding a bunch of money without adding value, you'll see countries like Brazil and China where like, we're fed up with this. We're not going to use the US dollar for trade anymore. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Because the dollar has kind of been this global currency that has created a lot of wealth here. Mm-hmm. And when people start opting out of that, it creates a problem. And when we print a bunch of it, it starts to water it down. And the best book I've ever read on all this is called The Ascent of Money, ASCENT, The Ascent of Money. Brilliant, talking about how money was started, talking about how governments have ruined money over the time and how countries collapsed. And a lot of those countries, they bounce back. They're still around. But there's countries like Zimbabwe where I have $1 billion Zimbabwe note. I'm a billionaire in Zimbabwe. I mean, I don't think it could buy a loaf of bread, but they just inflate that system by printing so much that it gets out of control. Or Venezuela did this. Or there was even thing back in the day when I was in college, they talked about the Mexican peso crisis where the value crashed because, again, they're printing too much of it. Or it was on what's called a peg system, where a peg system, rather than an efficient system, would be like, hey, this is what we're going to say the value of our money is. And then a country would go like, cool, I could buy $1, change it to now it would be a euro, but back then a franc, and then I could turn it over to a peso, and they could do what's called arbitrage, where the values weren't synced up. Oh, yeah, so you could automatically just be raking in money, and that really was part of the collapse. Or during certain times in Russia, people had wheelbarrows full of cash. People would knock the wheelbarrow over, steal it, and leave the cash because the cash wasn't worth anything. Because when we have policies that prevent value from people, and they're now saying, oh, we're going to add money. Oh, now we're going to raise interest rates. This is what's absurd about what's going on now. In 2020, during COVID, they're like, oh, we've got to we got to just create more cash and liquidity. So they're just printing money. Government's borrowing that money. They're giving it out to people. Mm-hmm. And there were some people that I think absolutely needed some money, like people who were not safe to go out because they had comorbidities and stuff like that. But ultimately, we end up doing all of that, and they lower the interest rates. The Federal Reserve chooses what rate they're going to lend the money out to the government, to banks, right? so low. So all of a sudden, banks started holding on to the cash to build up their balance sheet. Then the Federal Reserve, how many times do you hear about them raising interest rates to battle inflation?
All the time.
The inflation that they caused, by the way.
Right.
So they start to raise those interest rates, and the value of those treasuries, which is the government loans, the people lending to the government, start to go down, because why would you go buy a treasury from someone that's paying 2% if you can go get a new one for 5%?
You wouldn't.
So they have to discount what they have to equal 5% return, which lowers the value. And so when people start taking withdrawal from banks,
Yeah.
they're like, crap, if everybody withdraws, we don't have enough
Nobody
assets
has.
anymore because the value of our balance sheet went down. Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if you're enjoying these videos, well, there's good news. More where that came from. So go ahead and click through and watch the next video now.